This is a recent shot I got that I really like. I mean, look at those clouds. What may surprise some is that this was shot on an iPhone. This here is my setup that I've been using recently, and in today's video I want to take a closer look at it and show you what exactly this is, why I'm using it, and share things I've learned on the way while using this setup.
Smoking rooms, wherever you are. It's just about clothes and time.
To begin with, let's take a closer look at what this setup consists of. This here is the main component, the iPhone 15 Pro. Back a year ago when the iPhone 15 came out, I was not really following the event or anything because new phone releases are not particularly something I follow that closely. However, within the filmmaking space, this phone caused some noise. It got a lot of attention so that even I found out about it. As far as I know, this phone was a little underwhelming. It seemed like the only new thing about it was that it has USB-C. Oh, and the action button, I guess. There was one very exciting new feature though, which, however, the average phone user simply doesn't care about. But within the filmmaking space, this was a huge deal. The new iPhone is capable of recording Apple ProRes 422 in log. In case you don't know what log is, it's just a mode in which a camera films to capture as much data as possible. It's usually very low contrast and grey looking because it's optimized for post-production. This is, for many, irrelevant, for some interesting, others exciting, but for me, this was possibly a game changer. Now, why would I be so excited about the iPhone 15 being capable of shooting log footage? I think this comes down to what you as a filmmaker or creator value. Some people value absolute top-notch quality, others value a good deal. So a camera that shoots good video while not costing as much as a cinema camera. Something that I value very highly is usability and convenience. I talked a lot about this in regards to my photography in this video about my love for the Lumix GX80. One of my key points is that I'm trying to minimize resistance in my photographic process. And the same goes for video. I don't mind if the video is not of absolute best quality. It is way more important to me that I enjoy the process because that will lead me to making more things. You simply can't beat someone who's having fun. That is why I shoot my photography behind the scenes video with a GoPro on my head and just try to push the GoPro footage as far as I can. This becomes all the more relevant when traveling. While traveling in Japan last year, I brought my Sony along for the first trip. And it only took a day for me to be fed up with it and not use it anymore. Instead, I began to simply use my phone, back then the iPhone 11. And for the rest of my time in Japan last year, I ended up using that iPhone 11 a lot because it was so easy. However, the drop in quality was just on the border of being too much. The footage was only really just good enough for me. Luckily, I was able to push it pretty far with a lot of color grading. However, it still had that over-sharpened, slightly ugly iPhone look. So despite the slightly painful loss in quality, the ease of use I gained was worth it to me. And then came the iPhone 15. The fact that this can film in log gave me the hope that this might close the gap of quality for me. This could be the solution to that over-sharpened footage that I so disliked. And so after some research, I decided to get the phone just a couple months ago. And oh, am I happy I did. It is amazing. I'm not saying it's perfect, but certainly amazing. The log footage is indeed a game changer in my opinion. I think the footage looks fantastic, especially considering that it comes from a bloody phone. But it's not only that makes the iPhone a great video camera for me personally. This log footage feature was just the last missing piece of the puzzle. There are mainly 3 other factors that I really like. Firstly, the microphone. There are microphones that you can attach to your phone to get better audio, but that defeats the purpose for me. I'm trying to keep my setup minimal. And so I'm very happy about the fact that the iPhone's built-in microphones are really good. They are nowhere near great or even perfect, but for my purposes, they are good enough. Secondly, the lenses. This particular phone is the iPhone 15 Pro, which comes with a standard lens, a wide lens, and a 3x zoom lens. By the way, the 15 Pro Max version comes with a 5x lens, not just a 3x. I love the focal lengths. The standard lens, I believe they call a 24mm, however in video mode when shooting 4K with image stabilisation, it's cropped and to me it looks fairly close to my favourite focal length, 35mm, which is great, for me at least. The wide lens is beautifully wide and the 3x lens is an impressive zoom that is really useful I find. I'm not sure, but I think the Pro Max's 5x zoom might even be a bit too much for me, I'm just speculating though, I haven't actually tried it. Thirdly, the stabilisation. The iPhone has amazing image stabilisation by default. I can easily get nearly static shots or moving shots with all three lenses handheld. It always looks good, though it is noticeable that the standard lens is the best, which I can even use on a train or a car and get smooth footage. So that summarises why I like to shoot with the iPhone and why I bought the iPhone 15 Pro. Now let's have a closer look at the full setup with the accessories. Then, before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the continued sponsor of the channel, Squarespace. Squarespace is an easy-to-use all-in-one website platform. I've been using Squarespace for my website for over 5 years now, and I'm still so happy with it, mainly because it's so easy. I use my Squarespace website as a portfolio, where I showcase projects of mine. However, you can build pretty much anything on Squarespace, be it a simple blog or an online shop or a site for bookings if you're a freelancer. To make things even easier, Squarespace has released their AI design feature called Design Intelligence, which you can use instead of a template. You can basically build the entire basis of your website with the help of an AI tool which will ask you a couple questions and that's it. But if you'd prefer to start off from a template, that's of course still possible. After selecting a template, it's very easy and intuitive to customize the web design to your liking thanks to their drag and drop editor called Fluid Engine. I seriously love it that they have created this tool that makes the process of being creative while making a website not feel slow or tedious, even though I'm not a web developer. I recommend that you try it out yourself. You can head to squarespace.com for a 14-day free trial, by the way, and then when you're ready to launch your website, you can go to squarespace.com/TeoCrawford to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for continuously supporting the channel and my work here. I really appreciate it.
Peeling back the layers of the part I've been playing.
So, as said, this is the iPhone 15 Pro, not the Max and not the normal version. Important note here, I believe you only get the ProRes log feature with the iPhone 15 Pro or the Pro Max, not with the normal one. Then, the red case I'm using is by Moment. It's simply their iPhone 15 Pro Moment case. I'm actually the type of guy who buys those huge phone cases that look like I'm taking my phone on a military mission or something. However, this time I bought this here, the Moment case, because I needed this here. This is not just a frame, it's actually a connecting point to attach Moment lenses or adapters, and I wanted this to attach a filter adapter so that I can use filters on my phone. This here is the Moment 67mm filter adapter, which allows me to attach 67mm filters to the phone. My goal is to push this phone as far as I can when it comes to visuals while still staying convenient, and so I have two filters actually on the phone. The first filter is this red filter at the bottom. This is the Moment Cinebloom filter at 10% strength. By the way, this video is not sponsored by Moment, but full of their stuff. Moment, if you're watching this, just saying, I love your stuff, I'd love to collab. Anyway, what this filter does is slightly diffuse the light, which gives it a bit of a bloom, especially when shooting contrasty bright scenes with backlight. I like to use this not only with my phone, but also with my Sony camera. It simply softens the footage a little, which I find quite pleasing. More important, however, is the second filter that I have simply stacked on top. This is the Moment Variable ND filter that goes from ND4 to ND32. This solves one of the main issues I had when filming with the iPhone 11. Apart from the over-sharpening, something that also bugged me was the high shutter speed I was forced to shoot with, because I was shooting automatically and without an ND filter. That makes especially moving shots look quite choppy and just not pleasant. This is something I begrudgingly accepted last year, however this year I decided to tackle that issue with an ND filter. And so now, on very bright sunny days, I can simply set the ND filter to ND32 and still get some nice motion blur. However, in darker lighting situations, an ND32 is too much, so I simply set the ND to ND4, for example. I'm not all too exact with this, I just sort of guess what would be the optimal ND setting. By the way, this adapter thing is not perfect, it does wiggle around a little, so I sometimes find myself hoping that it would be a bit tighter, but overall it's still alright. While I chose the iPhone 15 Pro as a travel video camera for its convenience and size and actively chose to not attach a microphone, I do accept the use of filters even though they are somewhat inconvenient because they're so big. Moment actually has a small square version of both filters which I really want to try out. However, I'm afraid I can't stack them like I've been doing with my round filters, which is a pity because then I can only use one filter. However, for the sake of even more convenience, I might relinquish the Cinebloom filter and just go with the square ND filter. I'm still figuring out the final form of this setup. Anyway, that was an overview of my setup that I'm currently using when on the go in Japan. I do have my Sony with me, of course, for shots like these in which I'm simply sitting down and talking to you. But for my shoots, when I'm out and about, I leave the big camera at home and just work with the GoPro on my head and the phone in my pocket. The last step to push the mobile footage as far as possible is of course the color grading. I do a simple color correction and then color grade the footage as I usually would, which has been working great. Lastly, I also add some grain to the footage, which I think is a nice little detail which further eliminates the digital sharpness of the iPhone. While the log footage is way better than the normal iPhone footage, I do still feel like it's a tad bit too sharp at times, so the grain helps me out with that. By the way, if you want to see in more detail how exactly I color grade my iPhone footage and push it to its limits, I actually published a tutorial on my Patreon a month or two ago. If you're interested, there's a link in my description. Finally, I would like to share some lessons that I learned on the way, just some technical tips and mistakes to avoid when shooting with this setup. My first learning is that the lenses are of varying quality and require different ND settings. The standard lens is the best with the lowest amount of noise and the best low light capabilities. The wide angle lens is the second best. Here I've learned to be careful with the ND though. This lens tends to become noisy easier and doesn't require as strong of an ND when shooting in bright light. So when shooting on a bright day, I usually set my ND to ND32 when using the normal lens, but when using the wide lens I usually set it to either ND16 or even just ND8. Depending on the brightness. The 3x zoom lens comes in last. It's a little soft and quite prone to noise. So when using this lens I set the ND filter to 4 or even take it off if it's not too inconvenient in the moment. Seeing as this lens is pretty soft anyway, I don't feel much of a need to use the Cinebloom filter when using this lens. Also, here's one more thing to look out for when shooting with the wide lens. Because I'm stacking two filters on top of each other, the ND filter sometimes peeks into frame when I shake the camera strongly. However, when the shot is steady, it will be fine thanks to the crop of the stabilisation. Oh, by the way, the iPhone does show you a 2x lens, however I don't really use that because as far as I know it's just a digital zoom, not an optical zoom, so that results in a loss of quality. Then, one more thing that I'm still in the process of figuring out are the microphones. The iPhone has 3 microphones I think, and it changes between them automatically. However, it appears to me that when using the 3x lens, the iPhone always chooses the front mic, which however is covered by the filters and sadly sounds pretty horrible. However, when shooting with the normal lens, the audio is actually always great, and when shooting with the wide lens, it's a bit of a mix. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so much. By the way, one more thing. If you really want to push the camera to its limit, I'd recommend using the Blackmagic app, which gives you a bunch of control and even lets you decide which microphone the iPhone should use. However, I simply want to keep the process as quick and easy as possible, and so I simply shoot in the normal camera app with auto exposure. And that is all I have to say for today. I hope this dump of information was in any way useful to you. I look forward to shooting more and more with this setup and sharing the results with you in the future. Before saying goodbye, I would like to say thank you to the lovely people supporting me and my work on Patreon. Thank you so much to each one of you. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, tutorials or stuff like that, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop by the way, in case that is of interest to you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.